None of us like having to do something that we know is going to be painful or unpleasant in some way. As lockdown began and as the schools closed, we had to tell our youngest daughter, who's in year 6, that she almost certainly wouldn't be going back to school. And that meant that for her, no May Day, no end of term school play where all the year 6s have the main parts, no parties or end of term assemblies or end of school assemblies or leavers assemblies. No chance to say goodbye properly as she moves on to secondary school. That was incredibly difficult telling her, and obviously she was really distraught. Maybe some of you have had the experience of having to tell somebody that they've lost their job, and you just didn't want to do it. You knew it was going to be horrible. Or maybe you had an operation, or were going to have an operation, and you knew it was going to be a long recovery time, that it was going to be painful, not something you really wanted to go through with. And to do those things requires real guts and courage, and it's hard, isn't it? And often we have to really push ourselves to make ourselves do something when we know it's not going to be pleasant. On a lighter side, maybe when you were a kid and you had to eat your cabbage and you knew it really wasn't going to be pleasant, but you had to do it. Well, I've been looking recently at Mark's Gospel in my own personal Bible reading. And in Mark chapter 10, Jesus is telling his friends what's coming up. He's telling his friends what he's going to face. Now, Mark chapter 8 is the turning point in Mark's Gospel where Jesus' friends suddenly get who he is. Yeah, you're the Messiah, God's promised chosen king. And after that, Jesus tells them several times, look, we're going to Jerusalem and this is what's going to happen to me. And it's not going to be very nice. And as I read these few verses from Mark chapter 10, it really struck me again how much Jesus was aware of what he was going to face, and yet his willingness to face it on our behalf. It says this, verse 33 of Mark chapter 10. Jesus said, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests, the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later he will rise. Jesus knew what was going to happen to him. The most horrific, humiliating, painful, dreadful experience anybody's ever gone through. And Jesus knew exactly what it was going to be like. He knew what was facing him. Chief priests and teachers of the law, the very ones who should be the most godly, were going to hand him over to be killed. They were the ones who were going to be pushing for the death sentence. Then Jesus knew he was going to be mocked and humiliated, spat on, the most disgusting thing ever, flogged, whipped, and then finally killed. Jesus knew exactly what he was going to face. Think how hard it is to go through with something when you know it's going to be difficult. Whether it's telling somebody they've lost their job or going through an operation or whatever it is. Then multiply that by several thousand, million, infinite. Jesus knew exactly what he was going to go through, how dreadful it was going to be, how hard it was going to be. And we see, don't we, later on in the Garden of Gethsemane as he prays and literally sweats blood because he knows what's facing him and prays, Father, if it's your will, take this cup from me. But yet he was willing to go through it for you and for me. Willing to go through it so that we could be saved, so that we could be rescued, so that we could be brought back into a relationship with God. A lot of us are having to go through difficult times at the moment. Maybe some of us are having to make hard decisions and tell people difficult things. Let's look to Jesus, who was willing to do so much more on our behalf. So much more so that we who are broken could be fixed. We who are apart from God could be brought near, so that we could know God's love for us in such an amazing way. Next time you have to do something that you think is going to be really difficult and unpleasant, let's be reminded of what Jesus does and says here in Mark chapter 10. Because remember, the end of that verse says this, that 3 days later Jesus will rise again. You see, Jesus knew that also what was facing him was new life in heaven with his Heavenly Father. And that in buying our freedom, it would guarantee those who trust and believe in him new life as well. I hope you're well, and thank you.